Hello. Hi. That was a weird intro. Anyway, so welcome back to my channel, History of Teeth. Today's more of a chill video because I'm very tired. So I'm just gonna just ramble along, just yamble along, which is yapping and rambling. I'm just gonna go along about my main topic today, which is the Ajivikas and the Anjanas, who were two Sramana movements in India that were contemporary to Buddhism, Jainism, and Chandrism. Chandrika. Anyway, so in the spiritual landscape of India, there was three called non-Vedic traditions, the Sramana traditions that rose, and there were others like the Chandrikas, who are atheists. But the main ones, other than Buddhism and Jainism, were the Ajivikas and the Andanas. And I'm not pronouncing that wrong, because I am good usually with Indian pronunciation, of course I'm a Buddhist. But the spelling of Ajivika and Ajnana, I can't really, so I'm just going to establish that I'm going to say Ajivika and Ayana, okay? So, between around 600 and 300 BCE, India was going a dramatic transformation. Like cities were rising, kingdoms they excelled in their knowledge, and new philosophical movements came forth in this golden age of Indian, history. And this era gave birth to the Shramana movements, not shamanic movements, Shramana movements. And of course, there were many of them, but among them were Buddhism, Jainism, Ajivikism, and Ajnanaism. The Ajivikas are the children of fate. The Ajivika order is believed to be founded by, it wasn't, although many people say that Makali Kosala was the main founder, he wasn't really. It's kind of like journaling. My own sword. I don't want to keep going back to my own sword. I don't want to be journaling centric. But similar in that, although Dolpop wasn't the founder, he was the one who basically organised the different teachings and said, right, this is what we have journaling. Anyway, so Kosala was actually a Jain, but then became Ajivika, and he joined the proto-Ajivikas and then formatted it, like I said, into the Ajivika. And Mahakali Gosala was a very charismatic leader, and compared to the other non-Buddhist, non-Jain Shramana teaching schools, the Ajivikas were probably the most prominent. They had proper shrines, temples, monastic orders, not like the other ones who can't really be considered religions, i.e. some of them were agnostics, some of them were atheists. They don't really have any proper practice, they're more just philosophical schools. The heart of the philosophy of Ajivikism is Niyati, which is the doctrine of absolute fate. And if you don't know what absolute fate is, also known as fatalism, it's the belief that there is no free will. And when I say absolute fatalism, I mean they literally believe that pain, success, happiness, it's all predetermined. So don't try and escape from pain or harm other people, because you can't do it. It's destiny. You shouldn't try, because of course there was debate between the different Shramana schools. Of course, their way of arguing against the Buddhists and the Jainas, like, don't help other people, don't try and change your path and reach enlightenment. It's okay, mate. Everything will be fine. Just lay down, chill out. they say that life and existence is just like a ball of string unwinding, just unstoppable and inevitable. The Ajivikas taught that all beings pass through 84 million great aeons, and after these cycles, each soul experiences exactly 28 final births, including 7 as a deity. So a quarter of them as a deity. And then eventually reach ultimate bliss. And they also believed in the 5 eternal substances, which are also believed by the many other Sramana schools, which is earth, water, fire, air, and life. Despite, of course, believing that nothing could change their destiny, Ajivika monks still live with extreme discipline. Similar to the Jain Digambara monks, they were nude and embraced total renunciation. They practiced severe asceticism. Just like the Jains, they avoided root vegetables because they believe that they can't even take life like that. And they lived in caves just like the many other traditions. And they were actually patronized by Emperor Ashoka before he became Buddhist. And even though they, of course, originated around the areas of the other schools, they did eventually become very prominent in South India. Because the thing about the other schools, like the Jnanas and the Shakras, is that they did grow, but not a lot, and that they died out a lot early and didn't really establish themselves. They just stayed in the early stages and died out eventually. But like I said, the Ajivikas were the ones who were actually able to establish a proper area, get monastic teaching. And I know for a fact that even though it's not a proper movement like modern pagan revivals are, but I do know that there are modern Ajivika revivalists who genuinely have enough scriptures to be able to say, I'm an Ajivika, this is what I believe, I'm devoted to my faith. And they were especially prominent in, of course, like I said, South India and Magadha. The next part is around the Ajivika deities, and you might not. And this is another thing that differs them from the other non-Buddhist or non-Jain Sramana schools, is the fact that they still believe in deities, although they're not a main focus. They still believe in their existence. So the main deities of the Ajivikas was basically, it's hard to explain, but the main deities of the Ajivikas were kind of like, well, there was, of course, the Hindu ones, but they did have other ones. So basically, they believe in Tirthakanaras, just like the giant, they have their own Tirthakanaras, and they have 3 main ones: Nanda Vakaka, Kisa Sankisa, and Makali Gosal, who we know. And Makali Gosal, and these 3 are deities, and they're seen as deities, and they're worshipped. People devote to them, and especially Makali Gosal, especially in the South Indian and Jivika traditions, he was worshipped as a deity. There's temples for him. Although it's not a deity in its own right, the idea of Niyati is like a proto-deity in that it wasn't worship, but it's considered a high practice, if you know what I mean. It's just, they like more like a cosmic force to be recognised and venerated and held high. Other deities include Shiva and Vishnu, who were also worshipped similar to how Jains do. Jains, in that they say that they are, and Buddhists to extent, but it's a bit different just in Vajrayana, but they see them as not immortal beings, but just high up beings on the scale. But there are 2 specifically Jain deities, which are Akali and Okali. And I know that sounds a bit confusing, but the first one is spelled Okkali, but the next one is spelled Okali. So they're basically the same, but less two K's on the first, one on the next one. And they are believed to have given the scriptures to the original Ajivikas, because also like the Jains and the Buddhists, they believe that, of course, thousands of years ago, the teachings were revealed all that time, and they're the main deities that revealed to their Tirthankaradas. The next bit we're going to go on to is the Ajnanas, who have well, I'd say their religion, because they do have their own stuff going on. They are their own thing. They are their own faith. So we've got the Ajnanas, who are like the skeptics, like I said, the agnostics, the slippery eels, as some might say. And they're basically the most radical form of agnostic you can really get to, because although the Ajivikas embraced certainty and said, "Yep, fate is there, fate is here, fate is a thing." The Jnanas took the absolute opposite stance. They were the radical skeptics and said that knowledge is unreliable and teachings contradict one another, and that we can't verify anything. We can't verify God or gods or a soul or a karma or liberation. And the literal name Jnana means no knowledge or ignorance. They said you can't really prove anything, so what's the point? It sounds kind of stupid, but it's there. And also, back to the revivalists. Although Ajivika revivalism is more established, I bet there is like that one guy in some place who identifies as an Jnana and is an Jnana. Because although it is agnostic, I would still consider it a religion, because they do have their own beliefs and practices. Because a religion isn't really defined with a god, it's more defined as beliefs around the world. And that's why some people actually call atheism a religion, in that it still believes around the world. Because you might say, oh, but there's science and religion. Well, the thing is that you shouldn't see science and religion separate. They're both just ways of understanding the universe. And of course, religious practices throughout all religions have been proved as being true by science. So you shouldn't really say, oh, there's religious practice and sciences. You say that there's the different practices of each religion and science. And of course, Jnana teachers are basically anti-teachers. The lazy teachers. Okay, no offense to any Jnanas who are rivalists who are listening to this, but you ask them about anything, they're just going to respond with evasive answers like saying that certainty is dishonest or doubt is the only intellectually honest position, because they basically said, if you doubt everything, then you're basically the smartest person, because you're only relying on true knowledge. And the Jnanas, they had their own practices, they had their own aesthetics, but they still weren't in the thick of it, if you know what I mean. Okay, I'm not talking about the song. I mean, but they're not sort of establishing their own monasteries, their teachings, they're not writing down scriptures. Well, they did write down scriptures, but they didn't have any like proper things. If you want, the Anons disappeared really, really, really early on, and of course, since they lacked institutions, they faded even earlier, and we only really know about their beliefs because of the writings of their rivals. And if you want to know the Ajivikas, like I said, they were more established, and therefore they died later, and they thrived during the Mauryan era, and like I said, they even received patronage from Ashoka. But of course, Buddhism and Jainism became the two main Sramana traditions and were competing with each other, and these schools kind of got pushed away. And by the early medieval period, they had disappeared mainly. But of course, many people today are interested in their philosophy, and there is, although it's not as established as pagan revival groups, there's still an Ajivika revival group. And I know that my videos are on. Well, not all of them, but some of them are on niche topics. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's any Inyanans or Ajivikans, revivalists who are in the chat right now. So please comment down if you are an Ajivika revivalist or Inyana. Anyway, the thing I'll take from this is that, no offense to any Inyana revivalists, but Inyanaism is just more like, it's just like nothing exists. Nothing can truly be proven. It's just kind of a bit, no offense, it's just a bit stupid. Yeah, I understand where they were coming from, but it just didn't really feel proper. But what I'll take from the Ajivikas is that they were a proper established religion. They did die out, but I would say that they're different from the other Sramana traditions in the fact that they were able to. They weren't just philosophical teaching. They were able to create their own, worldview, cosmology, deities. Had their own practice, and that's why I say, to any Ajivikan revivalists, you are my brother. You are my Sramana brother. I'm a Buddhist. You're an Ajivika. We both came from the Sramana movement. I am kind of, I understand that you guys were disproven by the Buddha, but I'm here for all faiths. I'm a nice guy. I'm a tolerant guy. I'm fine with that. You're Ajivika. That's cool. I want to learn about it. Tell me about your life as an Ajivika revivalist. Anyway, thanks for listening. I think this was just maybe a bit longer video than usual, but I think it's been pretty good. I know I've been a bit more casual here, but I'm just a bit tired. I just wanted to talk about these Ajivikans and the Inyanans. Anyway, I'll catch you in the next one. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.